Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Thursday edition of the American Scouser podcast. I am going to be your host tonight, Callie, coming to you from Western Massachusetts, and I am joined with Scotty Fish in North Carolina. Scotty, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing today?
I think we're doing better than you. I hear you might be laid up a little bit from a little footy injury. Maybe the big boy shouldn't be running around like he's the
Yeah,
kid.
sometimes I have to remember that I'm now a coach. I think the playing days are behind me.
Well, we won't let the folks in the city office or the state officials hear those words because, as those of you who may not know, Scott is one of our fine men in blue. So he's on light duty this week, but that's all right. That hamstring will be back, and like many of our Reds, they'll be back as well. And also with us tonight, first time with me on the podcast, is David Rice from Atlanta, Georgia. David, how are we doing?
Doing good. Happy to be here. Thanks for.
We are very happy to have you, and what a time it is to be a Red. We have a final coming up. We have a final in 2 weeks, and we had a match and another victory to review. So we're going to start here with where the Reds started this week, and that was with the match against our old friend and foe, Stevie G. New foe, old friend. The captain put out a strong lineup, and you could tell his team was up for it from the start. But Jurgen, he run in some changes, and I was a little surprised with the lineup, not as much the rotation. But David, let's start with you. Before you even saw the lineup, did you expect rotation, and to what degree of rotation did you expect in this match?
I did expect it. It didn't happen in the places I thought it would, to be honest. I never would have thought Salah would have sat, but I'm happy that he got a day off finally. But I thought Fabinho was fairly poor against Tottenham and looked tired and was ripe for rotating anyhow. Then he doesn't look good for – how long did he play? 23, 25 minutes, something like that before he got injured?
Yeah, it was about 30 on the sub, but you're right, about 25 where it was actually running around the pitch.
Yeah, and he didn't look good during that 20. He just doesn't look like himself at the moment. I think he's not 100%. Klopp said after the game that he didn't have anything wrong, but I would have thought Henderson, or even I kind of expected James Milner to play in this game. Of all the games that we have remaining, this was a right for Milner kind of game. So I thought, he'll probably throw Hendo in the 6 and have Milner play an 8 with Keita and give Thiago and Fabinho the day off, was my thinking. So I was a little surprised at the lineup, like where the changes were made. But I guess since he brought Robbo off at the weekend, I wasn't expecting him to. I thought maybe Gomez would play for Trent, but I wasn't expecting Robbo to not be in the lineup. So yeah, it was a little bit of an odd one this time out. But I don't know what the data, the sports science people were telling him, so I'm sure that informed his decision.
Exactly, and it always does. I was too. I'm with you right there. I never would have put Salah on the bench. He seems like he's due a goal. He does like a match against Villa. He's had success against them in the league prior, and also just the overall mood around him just felt like he would play. And he was rested the week prior at Newcastle, so I thought maybe we'd see Mane get a little bit of a breather, or even Diaz. I also thought that this was a James Milner start, maybe his final start. Maybe that'll act and against one of his former clubs, which also would have made some sense. But I think, the Smeeka start, that Costas made sense to me because even though Robbo came out early last week, he did look a little bit gassed and still looks a little off the pace. So I think a full breather of 90 minutes was good for him. We'll get to Costas' kind of role in that first goal. How about you, Scotty? When it came to this lineup, focus on the midfield. Your thoughts, surprises, Jones inclusion, Fabinho getting a start.
Yeah. I think that, in our Discord chat, I can't quite remember who said, but somebody said that this was going to be a Jones or Harvey match. And I definitely, when I read that, I said, that makes sense. It was you, Gally, wasn't it? And I said that definitely makes sense. I think that one of the two is definitely going to start, and lo and behold, obviously Jones came in. I'm going to, reverberate what you guys said too. I thought that Milner was a sure starter for this game, whether that be in the more attacking role on the right side, or whether that be in that number 6 where Fabinho was. I just thought that our rotation could use it, and also against kind of an engine room type midfield that Aston Villa had with McGinn and with Douglas Luiz, and I thought that it would have been probably good for some senior legs to be on there, especially if we're looking into the FA Cup. Do we completely change our midfield 3 altogether? Do we take off Henderson, Thiago, and Fabinho from the start and let them have a rest? That way they're fresh for Chelsea. Hindsight's 2020. No one really can say that, oh, well, Fabinho is definitely going to get injured from the start. And obviously, we see that now that was the case. But, in the end, we got the win. I just think that maybe we could have just been a little bit smarter from the start, just with our lineup.
Yeah, it did seem to me like the lineup, there's one thing to make heavy rotation, and we've all seen it where the rotation leads to slow starts or maybe even stop and go starts where they may come out like a bat out of hell, which is easy when you practice how you're going to come out for 15 minutes. And then you get 15 minutes in and you're like, wait, now we're supposed to apply this for another 75 minutes of this at what pace? And then the mindset breaks down and you see those subtle mistakes. It wasn't even that for me as much as when you have rotation, but you don't even leave the small pockets of players that were used to playing together. Yeah. So you break up, Mane and Diaz with, Thiago behind them in the triangle they've been working through. And now you slide Keita over there, but then you bring in Henderson and you move Keita to the right and you bring Jones over to the left. So it was almost like you just had all these moving parts, and I thought you could almost see it. And
Gally,
we were
also,
a little choppy.
We've seen in the past, and I don't want to use the term easy, but we've seen in the past Klopp use, for example, Salah in games that maybe those were the times he should have had a rest. So in a time where, we're at the end of this season, we'll obviously discuss how much we're going for later in the pod, but I feel like now's the time to really put our players, when they're fit and they're raring to go, we gotta go for these games. And obviously rotation's important, but if a player is there and ready and they know their own body, the sports statistic guys in the back know what these players are capable of, they should be playing on the field.
Yeah, I think some of that, comes down to the sports science numbers. Some of it does have to come down to the eyeball test, because I'm with David. I jokingly said in the Discord channel, and for those who don't know what we're talking about, we put some posts out about it. We'll put a comment later. It's basically our virtual pub where we talk during the match, during the week, about Liverpool, transfers, drinks, designer food, video games, basically anything you could talk about. But it's our supporters group, and there's a conversation going on in there, and we joked, I think I made the comment that I thought, and I said it Monday on the podcast, I think Fabinho could have been sent off for any 2 of his 6 yellow cards against Tottenham on the weekend, and possibly the 1 red that they didn't decide to look at. So, I guess in some ways we were lucky that he was able to play, or he could have had 3 days off and then his hamstring 3 games off and his hamstring might be feeling better. But the truth of it is he's been looking a little leggy lately. He's looked off a little out of sorts at different times, really over the past, I'd say month and a half. The rest has done him well, but I don't think he's gotten as much of a blow as even Thiago or Hendo during this time. And I think that's what has a slightly more informed Naby Keita actually offers so much to the squad, is he allows you to give a breather without a huge drop off. And, we've talked about it earlier. We're going to park the bus on transfers to the summer, but I think we'll have a show or 2 dedicated to finding cover for Fab. Because if there's one thing that this side might have seen just over the whole long haul of, well, let's be honest, 63 matches, which is ridiculous in itself, is that there are some holes to fill some cover in on this squad. But let's get to the match itself. I'll tell you this, I was sitting in a dentist chair. I had a crown pop off, and the only time they could see me was 3 p.m. And I literally got frustrated, and then they told me if I got there 15 minutes early, they'd get me in and out as soon as possible. I was outside by 3:03, and somehow we were already losing. My dashboard might have heard a couple 4-letter words. And then before my SiriusXM could catch up, from my phone to the SiriusXM, Matip had scored and we had leveled. So by the time I got to the supporters pub with all my buddies, it was already 1-1. And I felt like I was about 3 drinks behind everybody. So,
and 3 heart attacks.
Why don't you talk me through, Scotty, what you saw early in that match, what you thought attributed to the goal. I know I have my opinion on kind of the breakdown on defense. So talk to me about Douglas's goal and, how it happens.
Yeah, listen, I mean, maybe we can attest it to the disconnect, the amount of changes that gone in, but obviously there was a lack of being responsible for your space, for your man, for runners in the first, I would say, 25 minutes. Clearly they were disjointed. The goal comes off, and listen, people can say, oh, Ollie Watkins was in an offsides position, a couple passes prior to what ultimately led to the first goal. But the reality is that Liverpool did not take their chance to come back, reset, and follow their runners. And just the entire kind of lack of intensity from our starting lineup right from kickoff was a little bit alarming. And obviously our goal comes and after 6 minutes, the game's level at 1-1. But the reality is we did not play well enough within the first 25, 30 minutes. And, David mentioned Fabinho's kind of poor form in while he was on the pitch. And obviously Fabinho's been so important to us the last, season, the last 3-4 seasons. And unfortunately, I think that it just has to do with the connections, has to do with the responsibilities that your teammates hold. If you make a run or if you make a tackle, somebody has to be covering the space that you now have left unoccupied. And I just did not see any of that. It was like we were defending with our 11 players individually, and there was no cohesion. There was no responsibility in a formation. And for sure, I mean, I bet you from America, we heard Jurgen Klopp yelling at all of them. I mean, the man was going crazy the entire game, not just when we were losing, not when we were tied, not when we were winning. He was going mad the whole time. And frankly, I thought the players deserved it, deserved all the wrath.
Yeah, it seemed a little disconnected. David, from your standpoint, as a supporter who's watched many matches over the years now, what do you attribute, some of these slow starts or, some of these kind of stop starts, these mental mistakes? Do you attribute it to the rotation, to the lack of familiarity with the players, or, is it just mental fatigue at this point?
It's a little bit of everything, right? It's a grind. The course of the Premier League season, it turns into a little bit of a slog at some point when you're playing that much football. I think, just from playing too, like sometimes as a squad, you go out and you kind of get off just slightly on the wrong foot, and you need that person who's going to like react and like provide a spark or do something that's going to kind of wake everybody up. And like Scott said, they all kind of seemed a little bit asleep. There was not much cohesion. The communication isn't there. Like I've played in teams where we started the game and no one said a word for 15 minutes. We weren't communicating at all. And it took somebody putting their foot up our butts, essentially, to say, like, talk to each other. And I think that's part of what Klopp is screaming from the sidelines is like, you're not communicating, you're not hunting in packs, you're not working together. None of that was happening. We were giving them way too much space in places. I thought Shimikos looked lost at times. It's just a bad start, and that happens from time to time. Sometimes you're able to weather the storm. Somebody like a Van Dijk does something brilliant and covers you. But in this case, it just was sloppy.
And David, you brought up a good point. I mean, you need that person to yell or talk to you. And I think that, Van Dijk comes in as captain in this game. And Van Dijk, I think when he's a captain of a team, he's very much a lead by example. When you see Van Dijk yelling, it's usually after maybe a teammate has done a mistake and he's yelling and said, "Hey, get your head in the game. What are you doing? You have to be over here."
Yeah.
I think that we see when Milner or Henderson's on the field, specifically Henderson, that man's barking orders live time. I mean, it's not post mistake. It's not after the play's gone. I mean, that man's telling them where to go. That man's keeping people focused. And I think that maybe we definitely did not have that leadership from the first whistle because neither him or Milner were on the field.
It's not a coincidence that when he comes on, we get better immediately. Like just immediately, the team picks up pace, everything. Like the passing gets a little bit sharper, movement gets a little bit better. We get into the game more. It's not a coincidence. I thought he was fantastic throughout the game. Actually, it's
for sure
one of those performances from the captain where I just think to myself, like, anybody who thinks he's on his way, like they're going to kind of start drifting him off. I'm sorry, he's still a massive part of a really important player in this team. And a lot of it is what he does organizationally. So,
yeah, he offers so much, and so much of the pace, so much of the speed of the midfield and the movement and the breaking down in between the lines, let alone the areas of the pitch that he takes up and the pockets of space he finds himself in. Sure. Is he as deep on some runs as Keita is, or, Genie used to be? No, but he's a different midfielder. He finds himself at the edge of the box with swooping in crosses and, key goals off the wing. So Henderson brings so much. He comes on in the 30th minute. The pace picks up immediately. I felt we looked a little better going into the half, but I still don't think a single player on the pitch after 45 minutes, maybe other than Henderson's 15, had actually acquitted themselves in any way where they were walking into that dressing room with their head held high. And I have to imagine they heard something from the gaffer during that, 15-minute team talk. Scott, when we come out at the half and don't make any changes, first couple minutes, there's not really an uptick in form or passion. Are you thinking to yourself it might be one of those days?
I mean, when I say, one of those days, I look back at, say, the Spurs game, right? How we didn't play badly. We played really well, and just we couldn't find that last touch. The box was packed together. The Liverpool that doesn't get the win and looks disjointed, I think just has to come down to the personal connections on the pitch when it comes to the field. So you have a team of, in the beginning, Keita and Jones, who really don't have that connection and that we've seen. Frankly, I feel like we haven't seen them play together that much. And when Henderson comes on, he's obviously adept to playing that number 6, but recently, he's been kind of finding himself higher up the pitch. I think that definitely a switch could have been done at half. I personally would have loved to see Thiago from the half. But frankly, Jurgen Klopp, he's the man for the job, right? He sees that maybe something isn't working after 15 minutes and he switches it up. But yeah, when you see how we played at half, you expect some sort of intensity change, let alone personnel, but intensity. And to not see that was a little bit alarming, especially when we have such important games coming up.
So before we make the moves in the second half and bring on Thiago, bring on Mo, score the go-ahead. David, what was your kind of overall comfort of, and level of play of the front three, let's say leading up to Thiago's inclusion, when he comes on in the 60th minute? What was your overall kind of feeling up to then? Because I know I was a little bit underwhelmed for what we've gotten so accustomed to seeing recently with the front three.
I think it was just a little bit lost. I think they lacked a little bit of help coming in from behind from the midfields. Nobody else coming in to help create and take some of the pressure off of them, allow them to make that next run, that next pass, whatever it is. Jota is a player who can be amazing and then can also be really underwhelming at times. And I don't think that he was particularly underwhelming against Villa, but I didn't think that he was offering quite what we needed at times in terms of intensity. And I thought to myself, like, this is a game I really wish Bobby Firmino was healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That he can drop deep and defend. Bobby's our best defender sometimes,
Yeah.
He can create from defense up top. And that's something I felt like in that game, we could have used that. And we were lacking it. Mane obviously can do a lot of that as well. But in this one, with Sadio, I just thought, don't take him off because you just never know. He only needs like one moment. And then he got it from when Diaz puts in that cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's been the way they started against Tottenham was pretty, was okay. But again.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously Fish wasn't on the Monday podcast. He is a much nicer grader than I, because to say that we played well in that match in any way, shape, or form, I thought it was one of our poorest performances for 90 minutes of the year. And for all the people out there that are kind of banging on Tottenham, and, they played an archaic style, but they were coming to a den where if they attacked, they were going to get beat 5-0, and they needed a point. And after getting the win they did today, it was a great point. And to be honest, if it isn't for a deflected goal that wasn't really on goal anyways, they come away with a smash and grab of all 3 points, basically with a tactical masterclass, like showing up and just doing what you have to do to get 3 points. And at the business end of the season, I thought we were really poor. I felt like we stole a point against Spurs. I feel like we earned 3 points at Villa because we overcame a rocky start. We overcame an early goal, and that is something of champions and something of, special proportions. And, let's talk briefly here as we wrap this one up about Mane's goal. It is probably not highlighted enough or recognized for how classy of a finish it is. It is a great, and if I hear flat cross one more time, I swear to God, they get these buzzwords. They hear something on a broadcast. They act like they've never heard it before, and they repeat it for a month. And then 2 months from now, they act like they never heard it again. But, so the flat cross comes in from Diaz. And, Mane's ability, he missed 2 basic headers, sitters, earlier in the match. And then this one, he gets his neck low, turns behind him, and just cushions it in. If he tries to put power, if he tries to place it, the thing is going, rose ed or off the corner flag. But instead he slots it into the corner. Such class. And to David's point, it's why you don't take off a goal scorer, right? Like when you have a goal scorer and they're on the pitch, you don't take them off. So let's talk about the goal scorer we brought on the pitch, who has been struggling at scoring goals. What do you chalk this up to, David, with Mo? Is it pure? And I know it's a little everything, but what would you, if you're splitting up the blame pie, do you lay this at mental fatigue, just sheer physical fatigue, because he didn't get the break I believe he really needed when he came back from AFCON? Or how much of this do we lay on the fact that he just hasn't decided whether or not he's going to sign that contract? And everywhere he goes, it's the first thing that he and his teammates have to answer to.
I think it's a significant distraction. I think the other piece that we've got to remember is they lose the AFCON final, and then don't qualify for the World Cup. And that, I think, sort of had a detrimental effect on him mentally this season, because ever since particularly since the World Cup, that thing, he just hasn't quite looked the same. He's looked a little broken. And my thing with him is I think it's a little, I'm sure it's heartbreaking, but this is not going to be his last run with Egypt. He's 29 years old. Mo Salah is in incredible shape and he takes amazing care of himself. He'll probably play international footy till he's 35. So he's got a whole nother cycle of all this in him. You got to keep your head up, lad, and just keep kicking on. But I think it's sort of broken him, and then he's got all these distractions from the contract. And yeah, of course he is tired, and the pressure is sort of mounting. Folks are catching up in the Golden Boot race. We know that this stuff does mean something to him. So yeah, I think you're right. It is a mix, but this contract thing is not helping at all. I really wish they could settle it, but I don't know if there's a way to do it without breaking the wage structure. So
again, probably a discussion for yet another podcast on another day. But I thought it was poignant to bring up when we talk about his goals. Matus chimes in, for those listening on the podcast. I don't think any Liverpool player cares as deeply representing their national team as Mo does. He is Egypt, and I do agree. Now, I think it's fair to say that Robertson's going to be pretty proud Scotland gets themselves into that World Cup, and he can knock them and get them through, or even some of our smaller players that play for Wales or represent different countries. But there is something profound when it comes to Mo in Egypt, because he carried so much for the nation as being the bell-ringing superstar player. And let's be fair, they were brutal to watch.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It wasn't even like watching him. It was like watching a false nine play it. A player of Mo or Ronaldo's class playing, at Stoke City, running up top and then hoping for penalties and defending for 90 minutes.
Yeah, give the ball to Salah and then pray. That was
it was kind of an embarrassment. So in a lot of ways, when Mane was doing what he was doing, I think Senegal has a chance to advance from one of the toughest groups at the World Cup. They have an outside puncher's chance if things break their way. And, Mane deserves it just as well. And I think what we're seeing is the fruits of coming off of winning the African Cup of Nations, being named the best player in Africa, and then qualifying your country for the World Cup, is you find a way to get back in form after having 18 months of subpar performances. And the guy who's been doing it for 18 months finds a way to go into the shell. So maybe we can flip that script over the summer. We'll sign some contracts and we'll figure out how to come back and roll this thing back for 6 or 7 trophies next year. But before we get into our conversation about the next trophy at hand, which we will preview, the FA Cup final coming up on Saturday, I wanted to bring to your attention an article that recently was posted. Believe it or not, our very own David Rice wrote the piece for AmericanScouser.com. And here was a quick quote from it that he shared in the article. And it's, "Whether the title is gone or not, I don't know. But we have no time to bemoan its death. If so, if this team has taught us anything, it's that they'll go for everything and give us all they have." And it was really in response to where we're at as a club, where we are as supporters, some of the positive and some of the negative feedback out there as the league starts to maybe slip away. And I thought it was something that we should talk about tonight. It was a great topic, a conversation starter on the website, published last night. So we thought we would get maybe a little insight from the author himself. David, where you were coming from in writing the piece, and just take us through your mindset and how you're looking at this as a supporter, regardless of how it goes from here.
Excuse me. Yeah, after Saturday, I just felt like you kind of look around and you see it just feels like, I don't know, everybody's kind of too sad for a season where you're going to possibly do a cup treble. You know, I think, look, it's disappointing, right? To have a run like this, to probably exceed 90 points again. Sorry. And then not win the league. It's heartbreaking. But at the same time, you know, they were chasing the impossible. I mean, a quadruple, no one in England has ever done it. This is as close as anybody has ever come. No one's ever had the hope of a quadruple alive at this point in the season, except for this Liverpool team. And so, I mean, the achievement of that in and of itself is amazing. And then you look at what they're up against, right? You got to think about, I hear people say all the time, they love the expression, the league is your bread and butter. But I think that stems from a mentality from 40 years ago when, you know, Liverpool really ran the show and pre-Premier League. But in a reality with Manchester City and Chelsea and now Newcastle with oil money and state-backed teams and oligarchs, you know, that we're up against, and the depth of the league, you know, it's not your bread and butter anymore. It's, you do what you can. Top four is really your bread and butter. And for this club, our club, I believe that the European Cup is our bread and butter. That's really where this club makes itself known and is something special. Not that winning the league isn't special. I want to do it. But let's be real. We're up against a lot on that front. And we're the only squad out there that's even competing with Manchester City for the last 4 years. Nobody else has even come close. We're the only ones that have beat them. So that in and of itself tells you that, like, we are so elite right now that we can compete with what seems impossible.
Yeah.
And then we can go win cup trebles. And for all of us here, at best case scenario, a cup treble comes around in your lifetime, maybe once every 22 years. That's the pace we're going at with cup trebles right now. So, like, yeah, last one was what, 2001, 2000 or something like that. So I think, like, don't lose sight of the fact of, like, how exciting and how incredible this is, what they're doing. And if they don't win the league, hey, they don't win the league. They're up against ridiculous odds and a team that's built to do that. But it doesn't negate the fact that what they're doing is amazing and that we might get to have 2 more days out in the sun with big shiny trophies and have a big party out of it. So that's where
for those of you out there looking, you can read David's piece. We're lucky enough to have him contributing on the site each month, at least once, sometimes twice a month, with different op-ed pieces, and they're always very thoughtful, and we appreciate it. And the title of this one is 3 weeks, 5 matches, and no rest for the weary. So we're one of those matches down, and we're going to get to talk about another one of those matches in a bit. But before we do, Scott, to that end, right, to where we are now in the league, we've seen 2 consecutive, they're pretty much clinical Manchester City beatdowns. Mm-hmm. And this is what Manchester City does, and maybe the one difference when Manchester City knows they need to score some goals, Kevin De Bruyne literally puts on his big boy pants, puts his foot on your neck, and just scores goals. I mean, you almost see it. If they want to attack and break someone down, they will. Now, they'll also concede a bad goal like they did against Wolves. But in winning their last 2 matches 10-1 on aggregate, they put themselves in a pretty commanding position, up 3 points. Going into these last 2 matches, starting with West Ham, is the league done and dusted if City doesn't lose to West Ham United? And if that is the case, would you consider rotating for Southampton and Wolves to make sure we had both fresh and, more importantly, healthy legs in Paris?
I think that as a Liverpool supporter, basically my whole life, I mean, you never stop believing, right? But we're at the point now where we do need help from other teams, and the reality is that I believe that City have to drop points on both of their remaining games. Their form has been fantastic domestically. We can all have a little chuckle at them against Real Madrid, but the reality is that I think, like, David mentioned bread and butter. City, that's their thing. They are created to be basically warriors in the league. And even if it means that we are relying on other teams to basically help us out and take points from City, West Ham and Aston Villa, I believe one has to tie and the other has to win to basically for us to win the league, as well as us win out our last remaining 2 games. It's no small feat. I don't know. I can't speak for, my positivity on whether West Ham or Villa are able to take off points. I think that City, again, are in great form domestically. But the reality is, David put it very eloquently in his article. We're looking at, again, possibly an above 90-point season and possibly not winning the league. And the reality is we have played incredibly over this season. We've done fantastically, and we can do what we can do. And fans that maybe are joining the squad and joining watching maybe don't recognize just how hard it is to keep this sort of form that we've showed, regardless of what City's doing, how hard it is for us to get higher than 90 points, higher than 80, 82 points, which, it really is incredible. So we can only focus on what we're doing, whether West Ham and Villa, take off points. I hope, I pray for it. Do I expect it? Not necessarily, but hey, we just keep playing our matches. We keep winning and we'll do what we can do. And we'll look at the cups to get a couple extra trophies and see what happens.
Matu says, if losing the league means losing all the, air quotes, supporters angered by not doing a quadruple, it's a fair trade. And I think there is some of that. I think the more you are out there, whether it's in the Facebook groups, the larger groups, some of the domestic groups, the international groups, you see a lot of that fair weather fans. You see a lot of the mistakes. And you know what? Everybody was a new fan at one point or supporter. It's okay to ask a question that seems rudimentary because we are all supporters in this club and everybody's at a different level of their path, right? And they're really falling in love. I don't think every one of us from day one was giving up hours writing articles and doing podcasts at night. But you get there, right? Because the passions get entrenched in you. I just think the ridiculousness sometimes and the pettiness starts to wear on you when you try to have these conversations with folks that, regardless of whether they disagree with me, just don't be petty about it. And you have to be realistic. And to me, that's the difference. The quadruple was never realistic. Did I want it? Hell yeah. I'm going to be there next Sunday. I'm still hoping a miraculous miracle happens. But if it doesn't happen, I'm going to enjoy my trip. I'm going to enjoy my first ever time walking into that beautiful mecca of football and sport. And I'm going to have a great time. And I'm going to cheer the boys off on their way to Paris to hopefully make me proud. And hopefully be the first set of supporters to cheer them with the FA Cup on parade at the stadium, that day. So, that's, or actually it will be the second set of supporters because the Southampton match is after. But who cares? I digress. But I do want to talk on quickly before we migrate in and really wrap it all up with the FA Cup final. There's a big match today, obviously, in North London between Spurs and Arsenal. Spurs came out, did what they usually do, which is when their backs are up against the wall and they play Arsenal, they make Arsenal look like Spurs. And Arteta's boys did what they do, which is basically bottle it, freak out, get a red card, and act like their capitulating manager does on the touchline. And it was kind of fun for me to see. It's 1 point with 2 matches to go. Arsenal has Newcastle and Everton, playing for a lot, obviously, in Everton. Spurs, Burnley, playing for a lot. Norwich, already looking for that balloon payment back to the championship next year. David, who do you see finishing fourth? And how big is it over this next week and a half to these two clubs that one of them will be in the Champions League next year and the other one will be in the Europa League, traveling to Turkey on Thursdays and playing Sundays in the Prem?
I mean, it's massive, right? It puts you into, both of them are in a place where they need to make some purchases in the summer, right? Some changes need to be made. You want to be in a class of player where you're shopping in the Champions League pool. And without that, you can get those players, but you're going to have to pay a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets harder and harder to do it, right? So, and you really have to find the right characters as much as anything else. So it's not easy. And I think that, both of them are doing a good job. I mean, in terms of like the way they're building these current sites. Conte's come in and what he's done there has been fantastic. You mentioned earlier, like put in an old school performance and get the points you need, but it is what they've done what they needed
right?
to do. Yeah. Arteta has really taken an Arsenal team that I thought was mentally pretty weak and just lacked leadership and really had no heart, and has made it into a side that, is formidable. So I think they're actually both going to win out, and Arsenal's going to sneak in, and it's going to be the beginning of Arsenal's rebirth, so to speak. So that'll be a big moment for them. Spurs, though, aren't going anywhere. That new stadium, rich owner, big manager. I wouldn't be surprised if they made, a deep run in the Europa League next year and challenge for top 4 again. So I think it's going to be Arsenal.
Before we flip to the other end of the table, what about you, Scott? How do you see those two finishing up, and who do you think makes Champions League?
I actually am gonna have to disagree with David here, and not on Arsenal making Champions League. I think Arsenal will make Champions League, but I think the reason is because I think Spurs under Conte has shown time and time again that they are capable of playing against teams that come at them and actually play rather decent football. The fact that throughout the season they didn't lose to either City or Liverpool this season, which I actually think is quite an impressive feat. But the reality is they've continuously dropped points against teams that they should not be dropping points against. And both teams have, opposition that still have some things to play for. But I could see Spurs putting in a Spursy performance as we've seen over the years. And, maybe Arsenal just sneak right in.
Yeah, I've seen enough from Wout Weghorst to let me know that Burnley is not scoring against Conte again. Romero's healthy now. David said it earlier, you don't hire Conte for virtuoso performances. You hire that poor Italian rug for the brain that sits under that poor Italian rug on the top of it.
We'll see.
That's why you hire that man. We'll see who gets in. I'll say this. Arsenal better get it because they had it all in their hands with 2 matches ago, and Arteta can afford it. Spurs still have the 3 best players, maybe on either seat. If you combine both teams, Spurs might have definitely the 2 best, if not the 3 best players on their side. So I'd argue that, those guys will all still be there, and the veteran manager next year, even if they're in the Europa League. Arsenal really needs this because they're on the cusp, and it's been a long, long time.
Yeah.
So let's flip real quick to the bottom of the table. Leeds is clearly in trouble with their point differential on same level with Burnley at 34 points. Everton sitting above them slightly at 36. Burnley and Everton with the games in hand. Real quick, Leeds has winnable matches, or at least games they could get something out of with Brentford and Brighton if they were to show up. David, do you expect Leeds to go down? Do you expect kind of a turn in the tail here? Maybe a Burnley collapse, or could we be so lucky for Everton to lose all their matches?
No, I think that Everton will stay up.
Me too.
He's got them playing a little bit better. It's enough that, like when they are in good form and the fan base is behind them, it's a club that could win things, but they don't, even though they don't, but they can win matches. And, I think that they'll survive it, just barely by the skin of their teeth, but they're going to survive it. I think for Leeds, I like Jesse Marsh a lot. I think he's a good coach. I think he's going to have to get them back up out of the championship as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Scott, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping and praying for Burnley to go down in the beginning of the season, right? I mean, I just can't think of a more negative team over the last few years than Burnley Football Club. And obviously when Everton had this dire stretch of form, then I kind of switched my answer to them. And I remember a couple of weeks ago, Gally asked me who's going down, and I said Everton's going down. And surprisingly, they picked up a couple of results, and I didn't think they had it in them. And now it looks like I'm going to change my answer again. And I think Leeds definitely just the form they have, the cards and the desperation they're showing right now. I do agree. I think Marsh is quality. I think that he does have the ability, given a preseason, giving a full season, he can really make those players tick. I think that Leeds does have quality talent. In fact, I would actually put Leeds talent well above Burnley for sure. And to an extent, the individual players on Everton, but the reality is they probably need a little bit more time with the manager to be able to play his thing. So I think that Leeds are going to go down. Yeah.
Yeah, I too. I mean, I started the season predicting Burnley to go, rooting for it all year long. Kind of like Timuchin, once they fired Sean Dyche, I thought it would be funny for them to stay up and him have to coach in the championship. But I'll tell you what, after seeing how Villa played, Villa's not laying down for anyone, and those are guys playing for jobs next year. So they got to play a Tottenham team that needs to win to stay in the Champions League hunt. They got to play a Villa team that wants to finish as high in the table as they can. And they got to play a Newcastle team that, until getting smacked 5-0 by City, gave us a run for our money for 90 minutes and had played everybody else up that they had been put in front of them in England tougher than anyone in form but us all year. So, Burnley could get 0 points from here on out, and it wouldn't shock me. So now you're asking me, is there a way for Leeds to get a point? And Brentford, Brighton, those are Jekyll and Hyde teams. Either one could show up and lose 2-0 or win you off the pitch. I will say this. If I'm Everton, you better get your point or two against Brentford, because you want that out of the way. Because you don't want to go into that last day against Arsenal with any chance at going down. And I will say this, I give Frank Lampard and all those folks credit. They deserve it. When you beat United, you beat Chelsea, and you beat Leicester. When you were on a run that everyone had you down because nobody saw you getting 1 point in any of those and you got 9, that's why they'll stave off relegation. And that's the type of thing that builds on a club. And let's just hope it builds them from 18th to 15th next year, because, well, who the hell wants to see? It's a long ride back to the top. So speaking of the top, anyone who knows anything about football in England will let you know that the FA Cup is old. We can ask Bickler. One time we asked him on a trivia question, and I think his question was, as long as the Premier League. And we said, well, no, actually, as long as the FA Cup's been around, which is like 100 and hundreds of years. So this is a big one. The last trophy that Jurgen Klopp has been unable to obtain, so this would give him the full cabinet while manager of Liverpool. Let's start with the lineup. David, what do you expect? How much of a difference from the Spurs lineup do you envision, obviously knowing that Fabinho's role will need to be replaced?
No, I mean, it's going to be different. Salah's going to start, obviously. Mane, I think, will start, and Diaz will start. But I'm just going to throw it out there. It's possible that if he's healthy, because I've heard that he'll be at least on the bench. But if he were healthy enough, I could see him putting Bobby straight in. But, we'll see. I don't know if he'll be ready for that, but he'll be on the bench. So I'm going to go with Diaz, Mane, and Salah up top. And then, Hendel will play the 6. and be flanked by Thiago and Keita. And then I expect your usual back line, it'll be Konate instead of Matip, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I got the same exact lineup as you do. And I actually, on my crazy little sheet, had Bobby right here circled, actually, because he was on the bench. And I think he would have played had it not been for the Fabinho injury. I think he would have gotten 15 or 20 minutes in that match against Villa. And I think he would have been then really in line for a start in this match. We struggled mightily against Chelsea at times, breaking them down with 10 men, playing them at Stamford Bridge. I think it's 7 of the last 10 matches in all competitions have gone to draws, including 2 to extra time and penalties in the Super Cup and the League Cup. We've almost played them to a stalemate over what has been our greatest 2-3 year window. Now, we're not losing matches to them. I do think we'll be in a better spot in this one because I don't think that club is in a very good place. Mentally, I think the sale and the unrest of the ownership has absolutely weighed over their heads. If we think that having a contract be offered to you between $200,000 and $450,000 a week is a lot of stress, do you know what having half of your fan base hate your ownership and having the other half be detestable human beings who support a war criminal? Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in, people. No, I don't have any opinions about the
nothing. When you put it like that, it's like, oh,
yeah. Just ask me what I think about kids in jerseys. But I do believe that Konate will start. I think Konate has earned himself a role in a starting 11. I'm not saying it's our first 11, but I think tactically there are matchups that make the most sense, and this is one of them. It'll be interesting. We have plenty of time before the Champions League final to get to that one. But for this matchup, I do expect that as well as the full foray of players. If there was one guy I would look for, there are 5 subs in this competition.
Yeah.
So there's probably a moment for number 27 to walk out on the pitch, stroll out there, look like he might know what day it is, might know it's a final, might think it's just a training session, and may just drill the winner.
I've said all along he's got at least one more magical moment in him.
Yeah.
Got to have one more in him. I feel like there has to be at least one more. Scotty, from a lineup standpoint, what do you expect? Any differences that you expect to see? Wild card curveballs.
Yeah, I think that you guys hit the forwards in the midfield to what I believe. I think that it's going to be Salah, Mane, and Diaz. I think Diaz, from his time here, has proved that he's capable of starting, at least for the time being, ahead of Jota right now, because I think the connection's been brilliant between him and Mane and Salah. Our midfield, not that it picks itself, but with Fabinho out, I think that Keita has proved over the last half season that he is capable of starting and actually really impacting games positively. I'm a Matip fan. I love Matip. I loved him ever since he come here. I think that he is our, best partner to Van Dijk defensively. Konate probably is faster, maybe, definitely stronger, has probably more of an eye to goal. But if you're looking at primarily our connection in the back, just defensively speaking, and our ability to hold lines and our ability to play out of the back, I do think Matip definitely shows himself to be our best partner to Van Dijk. That being said, with cups, I think that Van Dijk definitely does reward play, and I think that Konate deserves a start. Not that I think that he'd start over Matip, but if he does start, I have no issue with it. I have no regrets or reservations. I think that he's quality to play there.
Yeah, I just feel like the start against Spurs, the way Spurs play 3 at the back and the way that they try to hit on the counter, they have a strong center forward, they have pacey wingers.
Yeah.
Similar to how Chelsea will set up and try to exploit the space left if the fullbacks go forward. I just think if tactically in what was the biggest match of the year against Spurs, he went with Konate. I just feel like he'll be going with him here.
I think
Give me a score prediction, David. And while you're at it, if you want to throw out maybe a bold or exciting thing, you want to tell me Naby Keita hits a screamer in stoppage time, I'm all here for it. You want to tell me Harvey Elliott hits a bicycle kick in extra time? I'm here for it. Talk to me.
The scenes.
No, I think it's going to be, it'll be we're all going to be expecting a tight affair. And I don't know if that's what we're going to get, actually. I think it'll start like a cup final, and then someone's going to get a goal, and all hell's going to break loose for about 40 minutes. And I think it's going to finish 3-2 to the Reds with Mo banging a winner, and that's how he gets back on track. With a cup final.
Talking my kind of language. Tell me, what about you?
First of all, I think that but before we went into maybe the prediction, I was debating whether we see Lukaku starting or not. Just you were talking about Konate, playing against a strong center forward. If Lukaku starts, I think that just based on current form and everything going on, I think that Liverpool go in 3-1 to the good. I think if Lukaku doesn't start, it is going to be far more stalemate affair. I would see it going into extra time, but I agree with David. I think Mo has quite a bit to play with it. Possibly a volley. I think you heard it here first. A volley, top of the box for the winner.
All right, we're calling now where the goals are coming from. I was just looking for winners. So I'm actually gonna go, and Tamuchin would be so frustrated. He'll be sitting on the edge of his seat, anger and angst, and his Turkish stress meters will be just going off the charts. Stitch will be looking for snacks and getting fed. Because I think we score early in this match, and I think we put the clamps on them. Because I do think that they look to me like a side that is almost completely down tools. Spurs winning today actually guarantees them top 4 basically with a point. So, I do think they know it's for a title. I think there's unrest about whether the manager's back. I think you're going to see at least one striker start who won't be at the club next year, whether that's Werner or Lukaku. Havertz hasn't looked good in a while. They really don't know, and their back line is literally under contract all across Spain. Literally, they're going to put out 3 guys who don't. Yep. They're going to put out 3 guys who have already committed their futures to other clubs.
Yep.
Rudiger's off to Real Madrid. Christensen and Azpilicueta are both off to
They're all going in
Barcelona.
nicer weather than London.
I mean, and getting out from under, well, we've already called them enough names on this podcast. So with that, we're going to say, I'm going to go 3-0. We're up 2-0 by half. We score another. And maybe that's the Divock celebration tour. He can do cartwheels around the pitch. So
another
before we
89th
go,
minute Div goal.
Scotty, where will you be watching the match? Will you be alone? Will you be in your?
No, I'm gonna be down in Charlotte. I'm gonna go to the bar in Charlotte, Valhalla, where the OLSC of Charlotte go and watch it. And from there, proceed on to the Charlotte FC game. But obviously, this Liverpool game's the main event. So I'll be there with hundreds of my friends.
Make sure that the good folks there at the OLSC, have them tag us if they have a social media team there that day. We'd love to feature them at some point. Again, an article, a podcast. And David, what about you? Watching with a crew, watching at the house? What's the plan?
No, I'm going to be watching at the Brew House Cafe here in Atlanta. It's like over in Little 5 Points. It's a good little bar. Kind of a mixed crowd. It's not actually the OLSC location, but it's a little bit closer to my house. So I like that. So especially if I'm drinking. But I got a couple buddies coming up from Tampa. We're going to get there early, hang all the banners. That's why you see the Mane banner behind me. I got a couple others that are floating around the house. So I've got them all out, ironing them,
That's what we like to hear. We can't have wrinkled banners at our pubs and stuff. We'll be at my wife and I. Kelly will get up. She'll This is always fun for me. I get to go watch a football match with my wife where people don't make fun of me and give me shit that my wife is beating me in fantasy soccer, because American soccer doesn't happen for the FA
She's
Cup.
beating everyone. It's okay.
It is a good point. She is beating everyone. That as far as our contributors go, but we'll get up. We're going to go watch it with the crew as well. But remember, if you're out there and you're at an OLSC, please find us, American Scouser blog, on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Send us a message. We would love to connect with you. We have coasters. We have T-shirts we can send out. Different ways that your supporters groups can get involved or contribute to the content going through here. So, David, thank you again for a great article this week. Scotty,
Yes.
Thanks for a great time tonight. And Monday night, I will be back with Timuchin in the big chair and Bickler probably, eating a pot of food out of a pan straight from the stove. And that's how we roll on Monday nights, but we require sleeves, and that is based on the listening audience. So we appreciate you all for listening. Like always, share, like, comment, you know the drill. Share, perform, subscribe. Tell us that we're great, or more importantly, tell us that we're terrible, because we love that too. Thank you very much. Up the Reds. Here's
Off
to
to
the FA
Wembley.
Cup
Let's
Finals.
go, boys.